Previously on Balls.
It is Brandon
Yes, how's it, Neil? How are
from
you?
topodds.com, who back this show, is going to talk us through what promises to be a very tense and complex week of African qualifying. And I'm afraid, Brandon, there's only one place we can start, and that's with the one that's most likely to give us misery, which is South Africa against Botswana. I'm going into www.topodds.com. I'm going down the left-hand menu to soccer, and then we've got a whole lot of categories, International World Cup qualifying categories, and I'm just looking for where would we find South Africa in that? If we go into soccer.
Neil, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see International World Cup qualifiers or
CAF.
qualification
Yep.
for CAF.
Yep.
That's the central or
Yep.
the African countries.
Yep.
I'm not too sure what group South Africa are in. What group are we in?
South Africa in Group A, I think. I've
A,
got
so
all
if
the.
you
I've
click
just
on
gone
Group
and I've just routed out all the European groups for you, based on the BBC. But South Africa against
South Africa are
Botswana.
in Group A,
Yeah, they're in
correct.
Group A, the same as Orlando Pirates in Group A in the Champions League. So we're looking in there, and what you guys do is you tell us how much money we can make from putting money on South Africa to beat Botswana, and what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you have a look at the odds here, South Africa are very, very strong favourites. 3-10 with World Sports Betting and 3-10 with Betting World. LM Bookmaker giving you a little bit of a stretch at 7-2. But Botswana are they're offering 9-1. You can get 19-2 with LM Bookmaker. So, the bookies think South Africa will walk away with this one. I'm not too sure. I don't think Botswana are going to lie down, although South Africa do have to win. So, what is the actual situation? If we win, are we automatically into the knockout stages, or what are the permutations for this week?
Brandon, it's a nightmare for African countries, I'm afraid, the World Cup. Right, just to get this one out of the way, Sierra Leone, when we drew with them, we thought we were through on goal difference, but in CAF qualifying for the African Cup of Nations, it comes down to head-to-head. The World Cup, on the other hand, is under FIFA regulations, goal difference matters. If South Africa beat Botswana by any score, and Ethiopia failed to beat the Central African Republic in Brazzaville, South Africa go through not to the World Cup, but to the 5 playoffs, which are yet to be drawn. I think you get drawn in October for Brazil. So we're not going to go to the World Cup on the back of this result. If the miracle were to happen and South Africa wins and Ethiopia draws or loses, we would get to the qualifiers where there are a lot of very good sides. The big 5 in Africa are all waiting with bated breath for Bafana to make it, because I know they like to beat South Africa, and particularly to stop them going to Brazil. We've got your Nigeria, we've got your Ghana, we've got your Ivory Coast, with reams of good European players, playing for them. We saw what Nigeria did to South Africa, just a couple of weeks ago. Comprehensive 2-0 win, and so I am very worried about the playoffs, but it just would be nice for South Africa to get through on Saturday and get to those playoffs, so we've still got a chance. The dream isn't shattered. So that's absolutely how it is. But what interests me with your 9-1 Botswana, where you go into the bookies and you put 100 rand on and you'll get 1,000 rand back if Botswana win, the thing that interests me is Botswana, if they win and Ethiopia lose, Botswana go through. And so they're not out of it
Yes,
yet.
I was just going to ask you, is there a chance of Botswana qualifying?
Yes, there is.
If there is a chance.
There is most definitely a
they're
chance.
certainly not going to lie down. And the 9-1 then might look like a little bit of value.
Yeah, that's the only kind of. I mean, the general perception. Joel Mogorossi down in the Free State, he's a top striker that they have. They have 4 or 5 players playing at the top level of the South African PSL. They are not a joke. They are not a walkover. We drew with them. It was our great failure that we drew in Gaborone in our second game, having drawn. No, that was our first game, and then we drew against Ethiopia here. That was a disaster as well. But that's when South African Bafana management was a bit up in the air. We had the last game of Pitso against Botswana, and we had the only game of Steve Kompela as caretaker in the 1-1 draw against Ethiopia. Those were the 2 games that might have cost us qualification. So we're looking at a situation now where what worries me most, to be honest, is the playoffs. I just worry that we're going to come up against a fired-up Ivory Coast or something in the 2-legged playoffs and actually find that we're outclassed. But who knows? I mean, Gordon's doing a great job with Bafana. We're a lot more solid than we used to be, I think, and he's prepared to look at that centre-back pairing of Ntete and Matoho that fell apart against Nigeria and shore it up with Bongani Kamalo, Sianda Kulu, both playing overseas. So things are happening. We've got to go to Durban on Saturday with a bit of hope.
Yeah, I think South Africa need to take it one step at a time. You can't worry about who you're going to play in the playoff. I mean, you've got to get there first. And it's going to take a comprehensive performance against Botswana. And then hopefully, Central African Republic can do us a favour. Is the game in Central African Republic?
No, it's not. That was the big blow. 2 weeks ago, my understanding and Gordon's understanding was that Bangui has calmed down since the days when 14 South African troops died near there. And South Africa were allowed to play at a neutral venue in Yaoundé in Cameroon. And we beat them 3-0. But we were hoping that Ethiopia would have to go to Bangui, this hotbed of Central African football where they rarely get beaten. And instead of that, CAF decided that Ethiopia too could play at a neutral venue and will be playing in Brazzaville in the Congo, which makes things so much easier. I mean, anyone knows that playing a side at a neutral venue is a completely different kettle of fish to playing them in somewhere like Bangui, where there's recently been a civil war, where everyone's fired up. Come on, our football team wins, we win. And it just isn't going to happen, so it does worry me. If Ethiopia were playing in Bangui, in the Central African Republic capital, I would think there's a reasonable chance. But in Brazzaville, I don't know, mate. Can't see it, but we'll see.
Well, if you have a look at the betting, in that game, I mean, it's right next to the South Africa game. Obviously, they're in the same group.
Yeah.
And the betting's much closer in the situation. I mean, they're offering you even money Ethiopia. And the draw looks fairly strong. I mean, if you ever look in the South African game, the draw is nearly 5 to 1. And here they're offering just under 5 to 2. So they think this game's going to be a lot closer than the South Africa-Botswana game. As you say, maybe because South Africa have home advantage and Central African Republic don't. But, you never know in football. I think, Ethiopia hit that crescendo with the celebrations after beating South Africa.
Yes.
In the last game. And it might just be, they might be a little bit flat for this one. Although, how can a side be flat when it means World Cup qualification?
Well, if you remember, Brandon, just after their massive celebrations, a 2-1 win over South Africa, Bernard Parker's inglorious but superb own goal with his head appeared to have put South Africa out of the World Cup for good. But within hours of that, Gordon and I were flicking text messages backwards and forwards because FIFA had just put out a thing saying that Ethiopia had fielded an ineligible player against Botswana. They lost 3 points. Botswana gained 3 points. That's why we're in this position. That's why we still have a little bit of hope. But I do know, because I picked up a lot of Twitter followers during that whole conflagration around the illegal player, a lot of the Ethiopian guys immediately afterwards, there were people fired and suspended and lots of trouble in the Ethiopian FA because they messed up with that booking, the second booking that cost them 3 points. So they have had a lot of shake-up at the top of the game, but the team remains quite a useful team. And what interests me is they're not big lads like Nigeria, Ivory Coast. They're small. It's quite a small physical side. And the Central African Republic have got a couple of big lads. So the Ethiopians, if you look at their Twitter, and if you look, and they occasionally send me a kind of a boastful Twitter saying we're definitely going to go through, says Ethiopia, then they've got to be pretty optimistic. I think that would be my judgment on it. And optimistic.
Just a quick question with regard to this whole story. Was it not possible for SAFA to find out the situation with regards to Ethiopia before we went and played them? Because that changes the whole mindset of that game. I mean, going in there knowing that you didn't have to win because they would have been docked 3 points. I mean, why did the information only become available after the tie?
Well, that's exactly what Gordon said to me. Gordon, all I know is that Gordon said to me after the game, if only we'd known. If only we'd known, we only needed a draw. Because when they went there, the Botswana game was down as an Ethiopia win. And South Africa thought they had to beat Ethiopia. So they went all out for a win. And I think we were 1-0 up, weren't we? And Bernard scored the goal at the other end. And then after the game, when it all came out and we realised that there was a chance they might lose 3 points, and there was even, I spoke to Danny Jordan, and he was hoping that Ethiopia, having played the same player that shouldn't have played against Botswana against South Africa, when he was under dispute, he was hoping they might even lose 6 points and lose the 3 points against South Africa. That didn't happen. But I don't know. I mean, it's impossible for South Africa, say, to look into Ethiopia's team selection and to know what their team's going to be. And no, South Africa didn't have any idea that this was going to happen until about an hour after that match, when FIFA put out a bulletin saying that Ethiopia were one of 3 sides being investigated for playing ineligible players, which was very annoying. And crikey, imagine if we got a draw there, if we'd stuck on for the draw, and if Bernard Parker hadn't gone back to defend that free kick, we might be now in a much better position. And that's how football works, isn't it? I mean, we shouldn't really even be in it. A lot of people on Twitter think that to get through on the back of Ethiopia accidentally playing the wrong player. A lot of people think that wouldn't really be right either. So, it's technicalities and that people don't like. We want to see it done on the field. So I hope South Africa go out at what is it, and stuff Botswana and the Ethiopia won. Yeah, they are evens, aren't they? With world sports betting, they even. Ethiopia are only evens to win. So that's quite an interesting scenario.
I think that might be a little bit of value. I think if you're a punter and you're sipping, and you want to back a side who has to win to qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah,
Ethiopia might be the team that performed well in the group. Like you say, we shouldn't really even be eligible to qualify because we laid the foundations much earlier in the group and we put ourselves in this position. So I think maybe Ethiopia even money might just be a value bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at Friday night. Is the big night in Europe this week. As Ad Aarons has just told us from London, that Friday night isn't as big for some of the countries as Tuesday night will be when England play the Ukraine in the Ukraine and have to win without Wayne Rooney. I'm looking at, I've got all the groups up in front of me. If you go through the top odds side of it on www.tokodds.com, I can tell you what groups we're looking at. Like, for instance, Gareth Bale in the squad but not match fit to play Macedonia, the world's most expensive player this week, is playing for Wales against Macedonia in Group A. Scotland, having just been beaten in a friendly by England, are playing Belgium, probably man for man the most exciting international team in the world at the moment. There's two great games in Group A there. Can we have a quick look at those? If I keep the BBC stuff up,
we can.
Have a look at. So, guys,
yeah.
Are you holding up? Guys, anyone listening or watching this, if you go to www.tokodds.com, go down the left-hand green menu to soccer and go into we've got all the different groups broken into CAF and European qualifying. There's qualifying all over the world. The list of games over the next week of World Cup qualifiers, fascinating. Throwing up, like we said just now, Austria against Germany and Kazakhstan against the Faroe Islands and stuff like that. It's brilliant. And but there will be a lot of people watching to see if Gareth Bale plays in what ultimately is going to be a vain qualifier for Wales in Macedonia. And a lot of people looking
just a quick question, Neil.
Go on.
Sorry. I'm just going to interrupt you there quickly. Has anybody qualified from Europe yet?
No, if Belgium beat Scotland, they'll go within 1 point, and no one has yet qualified officially for the... I better check that. Something just rang a bell in the back of my head there. Brazilian... I know Japan have qualified.
Are Wales close at all? No.
Brazil World
Are Wales
Cup
close at all?
qualifiers. No, they're not. Wales... it's only a very small country like Lesotho, okay? Just leave them alone. My granddad was from Wales. Listen, I know Japan have qualified, sorry. And,
yes. I know
in Europe,
that have, but I'm talking about
there was someone
Europe,
else that joined them soon
European
after. It wasn't Tahiti, by the way. It was, hold on. Japan are through. I don't think there's a single European side through.
Because that's when you're looking from a punting point of view, that's very, very important.
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of, has a side qualified already? If they have, you know that they're going to take the game as a friendly and pass the ball around. But sides that need to get the points this weekend are sides that we want to back, like Ethiopia. So my group stages now are open, and you referred, I think it was to Group A.
Yes.
What group did you guys want to look at?
So Group A is the game where Scotland entertain Belgium, and Belgium have this lad Mignolet playing so well in goal for Liverpool this season, man of the match in every game. They've got Fellaini, who just went to Man United from Everton. They've got Hazard. They've got Benteke, who's playing well for Aston Villa. They've got Vincent Kompany, although he's not fit at the moment, won't be playing. They've got Vermaelen at the back. They've got Vertonghen at the back. Vermaelen might be injured. They've got literally 16, 17 of the best players in Europe. All happen to come from Belgium, the unfashionable Belgium. Whereas Ed was just telling us that there's two sides of Belgium. There's the Walloon side where they speak French, and there's the Flemish side where they speak kind of a Dutch, very similar to Afrikaans, actually, Kitchen Dutch. And they seem to have brought those two areas together. They've got a lot of lads from the old colonies playing there as well, happily playing for Belgium now. And they've suddenly produced this unbelievable side. And they could be amongst the first to qualify. No European side has officially qualified yet. And it looks very much like we're going to be in a situation where Belgium are going to be the outsiders to watch, even in Brazil, even in Latin America. So I just wonder what their odds were against Scotland.
Well, I'm having problems with my connection.
Okay, don't worry.
I don't know if you guys have opened. Can you see the groups in front of you?
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at the BBC stuff, so I can give you the groups. Comfort is looking at there he's got Macedonia, Wales, where Gareth Bale is in the squad but may not play. Wales 23-10 to win in Macedonia, and 47-20. If you go
so
back
on the right of that,
yeah,
on the right of that, you should see Scotland and Belgium.
That's right. We're just looking. If you go down, Scotland versus Belgium. We're just clicking on that now, and Scotland did quite well against England. The fairy tale winner from England made them lose 3-2. So Belgium, 15-20 to win it, and Scotland 38-10. Okay.
No, if I had to give you a best bet for the weekend, it would be Belgium. I like that Belgium side.
Yes.
You say they need a win to be within 1 point of qualifying.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't read anything into the Scotland game against England. I mean, they're always going to raise their game. I mean, the old enemy. Guys are going to lift their spirit and play.
Absolutely.
Football. But I mean, this Belgium side is a very, very talented side, and I think at 7.5 to 10, you need to get on that. Maybe take the double Belgium and Ethiopia this weekend.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. What we could have happening here this week, I'm just looking at a piece in Europe. The Netherlands could qualify for Europe, but they have to win both games. See, the problem is we've got a Friday night session of games, and then we've got Tuesday. And between those two games, it looks like Italy and Germany amongst 7 countries who could qualify from Europe over the next 5 days. We won't know till Tuesday night. Belgium will be one of those 7. Holland, Switzerland and Bosnia as well. And then in the CONCACAF region, Costa Rica, Argentina should guarantee a trip. I'm just reading through it now, just having a look at the different sides that should make it through, but no European side is confirmed yet. So all those sides have to make it, have to win. Go on.
What do you think of Belgium's chances in Brazil? I mean,
I think they're zero.
Will conditions affect them?
Yes, of course they'll affect them. Luckily, they've got a couple of lads who've played around the world, and a couple of lads who you imagine would adapt quite comfortably to conditions in Latin America. But I always come back when people start telling me Spain are going to win the World Cup again, or maybe Germany, who looked so impressive in 2010. I say to them that in Latin America, no European side has ever won the World Cup. It's always been Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina when we go there. And it's going to be very, very difficult. It's conditions, it's crowds, it's referees, it's all kinds of stuff that will go on in Brazil that will make it very, very difficult for those European sides to win. And that's unfortunate, because I think if the World Cup was in somewhere in Europe, if it was being held, in Russia this time, I would be looking at Belgium as serious candidates. But we're talking about 16 disparate players who've done well in qualifying, all play for different clubs, and can they all put it together? 16, 17 world-class players have suddenly turned up in Belgium, all of about the same age. Is that enough to win you a World Cup? Well, no, because Spain took years trying to produce that kind of thing. They always had world-class players, and Spain did nothing at all until 2008 and then 2010 here, when they won it in African conditions. So who knows? I mean, I think you need a few years together before you start competing. Maybe it'll be in the next World Cup. Maybe it will be Russia.
Yes.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, most definitely.
All right, mate. Did you want to have a quick look at the rugby? Because isn't there a big rugby game on for these big booker?
That's correct. Yeah, South Africa is playing Australia in Australia.
In Brisbane, yeah.
If you guys click on rugby and move down to Rugby Championship, the game should be there. You'll see that. So, it could be a home fixture.
Well, this is in Brisbane, isn't it? Perth is the capital of SAFA's. I spent quite a lot of time there with 2003 World Cup, and again since. Perth will be the place that loads of South Africans go with their blood is green. Sydney, there's lots, but Brisbane, also lots of South Africans up there. It can get quite muggy at this time of year, but then, there's a lot of Sharks players. Durban can get muggy as well when you're playing rugby. But yeah, and then you've got the classic was the British and Irish Lions going to Australia and winning the series. I thought Australia, were pretty much up there. They're pretty powerful side, and they've had a change of manager since. But you're still quite convinced that South Africa should win this one in Brisbane.
Well, everybody's talking about the backlash. They just. That's another massive. For South Africa and play there. We drew there the year before. We battled this time around. I just think if we keep the game tight and beat them up front, I think South Africa could come away with a tight victory here. But I've got my book shirt on, and 9 times out of 10 they go overseas and they disappoint us. So let's see.
And I suppose the odds on New Zealand Argentina are pretty much all one way.
Yeah, the spread there I think is 26.5.
Yeah.
It's very hard as a punter to take a big minus like that in the international, but based on the past performances, New Zealand should walk it. It also depends on the side that New Zealand put out there. But I think even if they field the second string side, they just love the game and they love scoring tries. And so I think if they field the second string side against Argentina, the score might be even bigger than if they field their more conservative first.
Yeah, no. Obviously, if it was in Argentina, it was so tight in Mendoza for South Africa, having absolutely stuffed the Argentinians here. The Pumas that didn't have a chance here, and then over there they got within 3 or 4 points. So I suppose it'll be the return leg. You might dare to have a punt on Argentina to run New Zealand close, but I don't see it. So we're going to look at a situation where it's going to be New Zealand, South Africa kind of bedding down for a two-legged tie to win the Rugby Championship, I guess.
Well, like always, it's going to come down to us beating Australia, which we need to do. We need to assert ourselves and say, we are the second best team in the world, and be able to go to Australia and actually win games. But for us, always the biggest task is beating the All Blacks in New Zealand. If we can do that, we'll just about win the Rugby Championship. If not, it always gets difficult.
Mate, I once went to that biscuit tin in Wellington with England in 2003 before the World Cup. The biscuit tin or the cake tin, whatever they call it, on the hill in Wellington, and I watched England beat New Zealand there, and it remains one of the defining moments of my sports journalism career, to watch that England side and realise suddenly how good, because anyone that beats the All Blacks over there has to be spectacularly good.
100%.
Absolutely,
100%. I mean, they're a different animal at home. They don't lose games at home. I mean, in the World Cup, they're 5 to 10 New Zealand to win the trophy, and that's from the beginning of the group stages. And a professional punter sat and looked at them and said it's an absolute steal.
Yeah.
They don't lose test matches at home. They just don't.
No.
And I think South Africa need to start doing that. I mean, you'll get Australia who'll come here and they'll beat us, in Durban and things like that.
Exactly.
You've got to win your home games, and then you need to nick points away. And I think Australia is a country where we can nick the points. The All Blacks are always difficult, and like you say, when you beat them there, you never forget it.
No, it's an unforgettable experience to do that. Brandon, great stuff, mate. Interesting weekend ahead, and we'll be back with you next Thursday. And this debate will go up on your website on www.topadds.com, and it'll be a lot better than last week.
Yeah, most definitely. Let them just get onto topadds.com, scroll through all our markets. There are a lot of markets this weekend. There's value to be had.
Yep.
Select the bookie that you think gives you the best price. And go onto their website and strike a bet.
Click and bet, guys. Yeah, absolutely right. Good stuff, Brandon. Speak to you soon.
Thanks
See
a
what
lot,
happens.
Neal.
If Scotland beat Belgium, I won't speak to you next week. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
See ya. Bye. To try and get someone urban today, but we kind of run out of time to talk about the Bafana game. It's going to be an interesting weekend. I can't get all that enthusiastic about it because, even if we beat Botswana, I think we're going to go out. But let's see, if we beat Botswana 2 or 3-0, Gordon's in the chair. We've got that, what's it called, that championship where it's only kind of home-based players play? That's going to be played in South Africa in January, isn't it? The CAF Championship. It's only for home-based players, and South Africa are entering a side for that. And there's reason to be optimistic. If Bafana can give Botswana a good seeing to, then we've got Zimbabwe, haven't we, the week after, in a friendly. And win those 2 games, and I'm sure it'll lift the nation a little bit. And then we're back into back into the PSL and back into what Kevin Johnson and Gavin Hunt were talking about with us today. Are Kaiser Chiefs in a slump, or is Kevin Johnson a genius? That's what we've been asking all week.
This is Bulls Visual Radio.